One of the most fascinating events in history, by far, was the Chernobyl disaster. The nuclear power plant that exploded, killing 31 immediately and thousands after the effects of radiation took their toll. It is located between the city of Pripyat and Chernobyl in the Ukraine. The Pripyat River and a large body of water that was used as a cooling reservoir for the power plant ran adjacent to these two cities. After 30 years, wildlife is thriving in these now overgrown ghost towns, even better than before the incident occurred. Some residents have returned to the city of Chernobyl to resume their lives, but Pripyat is still completely abandoned. I wanted to know why. I'm a bit of a disaster enthusiast. As morbid as it sounds, one of my favorite hobbies is visiting sites such as Hiroshima, Nagasaki, 3 Mile Island, and Bhopal. I've toured as close as I can to Fukushima and have seen the Darvaza gas crater, or the gates of hell, with my own eyes. I've even gone as far as Auschwitz in Poland. There's something humbling about seeing a man-made disaster in person. Seeing how destructive and uncontrollable the human race truly is. There was only one place left on my bucket list. I wanted to see where one of, if not the worst, nuclear disasters happened. An explosion so catastrophic that it leaked 100 times the amount of radiation into the air than that of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I bought my airline tickets and packed my bags. There was a small layover in France before the next flight took us to Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. I got a hotel room and got some much needed sleep for the adventure ahead. I was able to get a local taxi service to take me right outside of the city Chernobyl the next day. It was about a 10-kilometer, 6-mile walk to the reactor in the city of Pripyat. I received my backpack from the trunk and began my trek. It was still relatively early in the morning. As long as I kept a steady pace, I could be there by midday. Easier said than done. With an enormous backpack slowing me down, what should have been a 2, maybe 3-hour hike escalated into a 5-hour haul. I must have passed the nuclear plant as I was first met by these large white apartment-like buildings. Pripyat was home to over 40,000 workers and their families before the nuclear blast forced an emergency evacuation of all of its citizens. In the matter of a few days, it was abandoned, never to see another resident. I ventured into the city, taking in the silence and frivolous views. It was pure bliss. I passed the infamous Ferris wheel and the remnants of what once was a lively carnival. Tall buildings paint the perimeter of the city, and vehicles lay untouched throughout the streets. Everything has been overtaken by plant life. Nature has truly thrived since human left this area. Deer, bison, wolves, cows, and birds appear in abundance. Even though these animals are doing well, they are still affected by this radiation, and it's best to steer clear of them. I can't stay long. I want to make it to the reactor by nightfall. I made my way down to the river that will guide me to the south side of the power plant. As the sun sets and my legs grow tired, a giant concrete dome pierces the horizon. I read that a 500-foot structure was built in late 2017 to help contain the radioactive waste for the next century or so. This must be it. I made it. I found a small clearing a good distance away from the reactor to set up camp. My life revolved around these activities, but I wasn't stupid. in case the local police or military patrol the area. I wanted to stay fairly hidden. I know, I could get in a lot of trouble for trespassing in such a dangerous area. After the tent was set up, I crawled inside and was immediately greeted by sleep. I was awoken by the quiet tap of rain on the tent. I rolled over and closed my eyes to return to sleep, but was met by another sound that made my blood run ice cold. It sounded like something was in distress, something very large. The cry echoed like thunder. It was very guttural and sounded almost like a whale call. The vibrations of the hum shook the tent. Adrenaline coursed through my veins. I unzipped the tent just enough to get an eye through, but was met only by darkness and cold rain. I continued to unzip the door so I could get a better look. Whatever it was, a small plastic tent wasn't going to provide much protection. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. The hum cries out again. The birds frantically flee their nests. Then, like a wrecking ball to a building, an abrupt crash follows, shaking the earth. Construction in the middle of the night? I pondered out loud. A crack of lightning lit up the entire sky. What I saw that night cannot physically be possible. I've gone through multiple scenarios in my head, trying to come up with a reasonable explanation. A creature stood over the cement building that covered the nuclear plant. It was in the shape of a human, but just the decayed skeleton of one. The building was 500 feet tall. That's about 166 yards. This thing lingered over it, slamming its closed, rotted fists into it. Its jaws slowly cracked open as another booming hum rattled the trees. My attention is diverted to something stirring in the cooling reservoir. The sounds of a submarine breaching water. I waited for another flash of lightning so I could see through the thick black of the night. I was splashed by water as an arm, storying tall, reached into the sky and slammed onto the ground outside of the reservoir. Another creature emerged from the water's depths. This one screaming an ear-piercing howl, like that of a banshee. Much different than the other one. I ripped my gaze away from the beasts, grasped my flashlight, and ran for the protection that is the tree line. When I penetrated the forest, I met by a forceful push. I was tackled to the ground as Russian men in military outfits start to scream at me. It was pouring rain at this point. I tried to explain, I can't understand them. But before I can even make my mouth move, the cold butt of a rifle strikes my face, and I lose consciousness. When I came back around, I was on an airplane. I rubbed my forehead where the rifle had struck, but nothing was there. Just the faint remnants of a headache. The plane landed in France, and as my backpack came down the conveyor belt, I noticed nothing was amiss. My tent, flashlight, and sleeping bag were all in their respective places. Radiation sickness would take much longer than a day to make me that sick. Whatever I saw that night was real. I don't know if it's military weapon testing or the military protecting whatever is in that reactor. But now, I know why the citizens of Pripyat never returned home.